At the most exclusive gala of the year, surrounded by Manhattan's elite, a black single father stood frozen as his ex-wife's words sliced through the crowd. "Still the same Daniel," Monica said, her smile sharp as glass. "Working hard, raising your little boy, going absolutely nowhere." Laughter rippled through the onlookers. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Then the room shifted. Victoria Ashford, CEO, billionaire, the most powerful woman in the building, walked straight toward him. Without a word, she linked her arm through his, and Monica's smile cracked. What satisfies revenge more than success, witnessed by the one who doubted you most? Before we dive deeper into this story, I would love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about people rising above those who doubted them, go ahead and subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. But this satisfying moment did not happen overnight. To understand how Daniel Carter ended up standing in that ballroom with the most powerful woman in New York on his arm, we need to go back 4 months. Daniel Carter had spent 5 years at Sterling and Associates being invisible. Not incompetent, never incompetent. His quarterly reports were flawless. His analysis consistently predicted market shifts before anyone else saw them coming. His colleagues borrowed his insights regularly, sometimes remembering to credit him, mostly not. But invisibility, Daniel had learned, was the safest place for a man like him. At 34 years old, he had already collected enough lessons about what happened when black men drew too much attention. Stand out too much, and suddenly every mistake becomes proof of incompetence. Every success becomes suspicion. Every emotion becomes a threat. So Daniel kept his head down, did excellent work, and went home every evening by 6 to the only person in the world who saw him completely, his 6-year-old son, Ethan. The divorce had been finalized 2 years ago, but the wound still throbbed on quiet nights. Monica had stood in their kitchen, her designer bag already packed by the door, and delivered her verdict with clinical precision. "You have no ambition, Daniel. You chose changing diapers over building something. I cannot spend my life watching you settle for mediocrity." He had wanted to argue. He had wanted to explain that being present for his son was not settling, it was choosing. But Monica's mind had been made up long before that conversation. She had already accepted the promotion that required relocation. She had already decided that Ethan was an obstacle to the life she deserved. The custody battle that followed nearly broke him. A black father fighting for primary custody in family court was swimming against a current most people pretended did not exist. But Daniel had documentation. He had witnesses. He had 2 years of school pickups and doctor's appointments and bedtime stories to prove what kind of father he was. The judge granted him full custody. Monica took her career and her ambitions to a rival firm across town, and Daniel was left to rebuild a life for two on a single income. Most days he managed. Some days the weight of being everything to everyone crushed the air from his lungs. But every morning Ethan would crawl into his bed, wrap small arms around his neck and whisper, "Good morning, Daddy." And Daniel would remember why invisible was acceptable, why safe was enough. Until the morning everything changed. The text from his babysitter arrived at 7:43, exactly 17 minutes before Daniel needed to leave for the most important presentation of his quarter. "Emergency. Can't come today. So sorry." Daniel stared at the screen, his coffee growing cold in his hand. His mother lived 2 hours away. His sister was traveling for work. Every backup option he had cultivated over 2 years of single parenting had somehow collapsed on the same morning. Ethan appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, holding a stuffed dinosaur. "Daddy, is Mrs. Patterson coming?" Daniel made a decision that terrified him. "No, buddy, you are coming to work with me today." The drive to Sterling and Associates felt like driving toward a cliff. Daniel ran through scenarios in his head, all of them ending badly. A single father bringing his child to a board presentation. A black man confirming every stereotype about irresponsibility and lack of professionalism. He could already hear the whispers. He set Ethan up in the small break room near his floor with a tablet, headphones, and strict instructions. "Stay here, okay? Daddy has a very important meeting. I will come get you the second it is over." Ethan nodded solemnly, already absorbed in his cartoon. The presentation was going smoothly. Daniel had prepared for weeks, and his analysis of the Henderson acquisition was comprehensive, precise, exactly what the board needed to make their decision. He was 3 slides from the finish when the conference room door swung open. Ethan stood there, tears streaming down his face, the tablet clutched to his chest. "Daddy, it stopped working and I could not find you, and—" The room went silent. 12 executives turned to stare. Daniel felt his career crumbling in real time. He moved without thinking, crossing the room and kneeling to meet his son's eyes. Hey, it is okay. Daddy is right here." His voice was calm, steady, even as his heart hammered against his ribs. He wiped Ethan's tears with his thumb, took the tablet, and quickly restarted it. "See, all fixed. Can you be brave for 5 more minutes while Daddy finishes?" Ethan sniffled and nodded. Daniel looked up at the room full of executives. "I apologize for the interruption. If you will give me 2 minutes to settle my son, I will complete the presentation." No one spoke. But Daniel noticed one person who was not looking at him with irritation or judgment. Victoria Ashford, the CEO of Sterling and Associates, watched him with an expression he could not read. Her eyes moved from him to Ethan and back again, something flickering behind her careful composure. Daniel returned Ethan to the break room this time with a security guard who owed him a favor standing watch. Then he walked back into the conference room and finished his presentation without missing a beat. Afterward, as the other executives filed out, murmuring to each other, Victoria's assistant appeared at his side. "Ms. Ashford would like to see you in her office." Daniel's stomach dropped. This was it, the termination conversation wrapped in corporate politeness. Victoria Ashford's office occupied the entire corner of the 47th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, and the furniture probably cost more than Daniel's annual salary. She sat behind her desk, still in the same impeccable suit from the meeting, and gestured for him to sit. "How long have you worked here, Mr. Carter?" 5 years, ma'am." Victoria's eyebrow lifted slightly. 5 years. And you are still in the same position you started in? Daniel did not know how to answer that without sounding bitter or defensive, so he said nothing. Victoria studied him for a long moment. "I watched you today. Not just the presentation, which was excellent, by the way. I watched how you handled your son. You did not panic. You did not make excuses. You addressed the situation with competence and returned to complete your work at the same level of quality." She leaned forward slightly. "Do you know how rare that is?" Daniel remained silent, uncertain where this was going. "I will be direct with you," Victoria continued. "I have seen your file. I have seen your performance reviews. You have been underutilized for years, and I suspect you know exactly why." The unspoken truth hung between them. Daniel was careful not to fill the silence. Victoria nodded slowly, as if his restraint confirmed something for her. "I have a project, strategic-level reports directly to me. It is above your current position, and frankly, accepting it will put a target on your back. People will question why you were chosen. They will scrutinize your work twice as hard and forgive your mistakes half as much." Her gaze held his. "But I need someone who can see the whole picture without letting ego get in the way. Your record tells me you can. The question is, are you willing to step up?" Daniel thought about Ethan, about the careful, invisible life he had built to protect them both, about what it meant to be a black single father reaching for something more in a world that expected him to fail. Then he thought about Ethan, watching him learning what a man was supposed to be. "I am willing," Daniel said. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, not a smile, but close. "Good. Report to my office Monday morning, and Mr. Carter..." She turned back to her computer, already dismissing him. "Do not make me regret this." As Daniel walked out of her office, he did not yet know that Victoria Ashford had spent the first 5 years of her career as a single mother. He did not know that she had once hidden her daughter in her office closet during a client meeting because she had no other options. He did not know that when she looked at him kneeling before his son, calm and present and unashamed, she saw a reflection of her own impossible choices. All Daniel knew was that for the first time in 5 years, someone had looked at him and seen more than what he was. They had seen what he could become. The question now was whether he had the courage to become it. The whispers started on Daniel's first day in his new role. He heard them in the elevator, in the break room, in the careful silences that fell whenever he entered a meeting. Nobody said anything to his face that was not how it worked at Sterling and Associates. But the message traveled through glances and raised eyebrows and conversations that stopped just a beat too late. "Diversity hire," someone muttered behind him in the coffee line during his second week. Daniel poured his coffee and did not turn around. He had expected this. Victoria had warned him, and he had accepted the position anyway. What he had not expected was how much it would still sting. His former manager, Richard Covington, made his displeasure known through 1,000 small cuts, delayed email responses, meetings scheduled without Daniel's knowledge, resources promised and then mysteriously unavailable. Richard had been passed over for the strategic role that now belonged to Daniel, and he wore his resentment like an expensive cologne, subtle but impossible to ignore. "I just want to make sure you have everything you need to succeed," Richard said during their first awkward encounter, his smile never reaching his eyes. "It is quite a leap from where you were. No one would blame you if you found it overwhelming." Daniel thanked him for his concern and returned to his work. The project Victoria had assigned him was a comprehensive analysis of Sterling's expansion strategy into emerging markets. It required coordinating with departments across 3 continents, synthesizing data from sources that did not always agree, and presenting recommendations that would shape the company's direction for the next decade. It was exactly the kind of work Daniel had spent 5 years proving he could do if anyone had bothered to look. Now everyone was looking and waiting for him to fail. Daniel responded the only way he knew how, by being undeniable. He arrived early and prepared more thoroughly than anyone expected. His analysis was meticulous, his presentations flawless, his insights consistently sharper than what the executives were used to seeing. Week by week, the whispers began to change. Maybe he actually knows what he is doing, he overheard one colleague admit to another. But the work came at a cost. Daniel found himself staying later, working through lunches, answering emails at midnight. The familiar guilt began to gnaw at him, the same guilt that had haunted his marriage, the feeling of being pulled in directions that could never fully reconcile. One evening, nearly 2 months into the project, Daniel sat alone in his office at 7:30. The building had grown quiet around him, most of his colleagues long gone to dinners and families and lives outside these walls. His phone buzzed with a video call from home. Ethan's face filled the screen, gap-toothed and grinning. "Daddy, Grandma made spaghetti, but she put weird stuff in it." Daniel laughed despite his exhaustion. "Weird stuff? What kind of weird stuff?" "Green things. She said it is healthy, but I think she is trying to trick me." "That is called spinach, buddy. And Grandma is right, it is good for you." Ethan made a face that suggested he remained unconvinced. "When are you coming home? You said you would read me the dragon book tonight." Daniel glanced at the stack of reports still waiting on his desk. The deadline was tomorrow. He had hours of work left, but looking at his son's expectant face, he made the same choice he always made. "I will be home in 30 minutes. Save my spot on the couch, okay?" He did not notice Victoria standing in his doorway until he ended the call. She leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching him with an expression he still could not fully read. Daniel straightened instinctively, wondering how much she had heard, wondering if this would be the moment she decided he was not committed enough after all. Instead, Victoria said something that caught him completely off guard. "My daughter hated me for years, you know." Daniel blinked. "Ma'am." Victoria walked into his office and sat in the chair across from his desk, a reversal of their usual dynamic that felt strange and unexpectedly intimate. "When she was your son's age, I was building this company. I missed school plays. I missed bedtimes. I missed the first time she rode a bicycle because I was closing a deal in Singapore." Her voice remained steady, but something flickered beneath the surface. "She is 18 now. We have repaired things mostly, but I will never get those years back." She met Daniel's eyes directly. "You are doing something I never figured out how to do. You are being present for your child while still demanding more from your career. Do not let anyone, including me, convince you that is a weakness." Before Daniel could respond, Victoria stood and walked toward the door. She stopped at the threshold and added without turning around, "The Henderson report can wait until 9 tomorrow morning. Go read your son his dragon book." It was not a suggestion. Daniel made it home in 28 minutes. Ethan fell asleep halfway through chapter 3, his small body warm against Daniel's side, the book still open across their laps. And for the first time since accepting the promotion, Daniel felt like maybe, just maybe, he was not failing at everything. 3 months later, the project was complete. Daniel's recommendations had been adopted almost entirely. His analysis had identified opportunities worth an estimated $40 million over 5 years, and the board had formally approved the expansion strategy he had architected. Victoria announced his promotion at the quarterly all-hands meeting. Daniel Carter will be assuming the role of Director of Strategy effective immediately. This decision is based on merit, performance, and results. I expect you all to give him the same support you would give anyone in this position." The applause was polite. Some of it was even genuine. But Daniel noticed the tightness in Richard Covington's jaw, the way certain colleagues' smiles did not quite reach their eyes. He had achieved something remarkable, and some people would never forgive him for it. After the meeting, Victoria pulled him aside. "The annual gala is in 2 weeks. I expect you to attend." Daniel hesitated. He had seen photos from previous galas, glittering affairs filled with Manhattan's elite, the kind of spaces where someone like him was usually holding a serving tray rather than a champagne flute. Victoria read his hesitation accurately. "I know it is not your preferred environment, but this is how the game is played. These people need to see you standing among them, not serving them. It matters." Daniel wanted to argue that it should not matter, that his work should speak for itself. But he had spent enough years navigating systems that were not designed for him to know that Victoria was right. Visibility was currency, and he had been invisible for too long. "I will be there," he said. 2 weeks later, Daniel stood in his bedroom, adjusting a tie that cost more than his first month's salary at Sterling. In the mirror, he saw a man he barely recognized, polished professional, outwardly belonging to a world that had never felt like his. His mother sat on the bed watching him with knowing eyes. Dorothy Carter had raised 3 children on a nurse's salary in a neighborhood where success was measured by survival. She had watched her son fight for everything he had, and she had never once let him believe he deserved any less. "You look handsome," she said. "Your father would be proud." Daniel's father had died when Daniel was 16, a heart attack sudden and devastating. He had been a postal worker who read philosophy books on his lunch breaks and taught his children that dignity was something no one could take from you unless you let them. "I wish he could see Ethan," Daniel said quietly. "He sees him." Dorothy's voice was firm with conviction. "Now stop fussing with that tie and go show those fancy people what a Carter is made of." Daniel's phone buzzed, the babysitter confirming she was on her way. But when he went to check on Ethan, he found his son curled up on the couch, cheeks, flushed forehead, warm to the touch. "Daddy, my tummy hurts," Ethan whimpered. Daniel's heart sank. He pressed his palm to Ethan's forehead, feeling the unmistakable heat of a fever. The gala started in 2 hours. This was supposed to be his moment. He reached for his phone to cancel when his mother's hand closed over his wrist. "I raised 3 children through chickenpox flu, and that time your brother decided to eat a whole jar of paste," Dorothy said calmly. "I can handle a fever. The babysitter can go home. Ethan will be fine. Mama, I cannot just leave him when he is sick." "Daniel." His mother's voice carried the weight of 30 years of wisdom. "Your son is going to be fine. But sometimes you need to let the world see who you are. Not for your ego, for every little boy who looks like Ethan and needs to know that men like his daddy can stand in rooms like that and belong there." Daniel looked at Ethan, who had already drifted into a drowsy half-sleep. He looked at his mother, steady and certain. He thought about all the rooms he had not entered, all the spaces he had not claimed, all the times he had made himself small because it was safer. "Call me if anything changes," he said finally. "Anything at all." Dorothy waved him toward the door. "Go, and stand up straight. You are a Carter." The Sterling and Associates annual gala occupied the grand ballroom of the Whitmore Hotel, a cathedral of crystal chandeliers and marble floors that seemed designed to remind ordinary people of their ordinariness. Daniel handed his invitation to the attendant and stepped inside, immediately feeling the familiar sensation of being watched. He recognized faces from business magazines and financial news titans of industry old money aristocrats, the kind of people who shape the world, from rooms like this one. Daniel accepted a glass of champagne he did not intend to drink and tried to remember how to breathe. For the first hour, he navigated carefully. A conversation with a potential client here, a polite exchange with a board member there. Victoria caught his eye across the room and gave him a slight nod of approval. Daniel was starting to think he might actually survive the evening when he turned and found himself face to face with his past. Monica stood 10 feet away, draped in a designer gown that probably cost more than his car. She was laughing at something said by the man beside her, tall, silver-haired white, radiating the easy confidence of generational wealth. Her date for the evening, apparently. Or perhaps something more. Monica's laugh died when she spotted Daniel. For a moment, something flickered across her face, surprised discomfort, something almost like fear. Then her expression smoothed into the polished mask Daniel remembered from the end of their marriage. She walked toward him, her date trailing behind with mild curiosity. "Daniel." Monica's smile was perfectly calibrated, warm enough to appear gracious, cold enough to cut. "I did not expect to see you here." "Monica." Daniel kept his voice neutral. "You look well." "I look successful," she corrected with a small laugh that invited nearby listeners to share the joke. "But then I always knew what I wanted." "Not everyone has that clarity, do they?" Daniel felt the barb, but did not react. He had learned long ago that Monica fought with implications and suggestions, weapons that left no visible wounds. "How is Ethan?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough to reach the small audience that had begun to gather. "Still keeping you busy, I imagine. It must be so hard doing everything alone. Honestly, I do not know how you manage." "Ethan is doing wonderfully," Daniel replied. "Thank you for asking." Monica's smile sharpened. "Of course he is. You always were devoted to him. Some might even say to a fault." She glanced around the room meaningfully. "It is just a shame that devotion did not leave much room for ambition, professional development. But then, not everyone is meant for spaces like this, are they?" The words hung in the air, their meaning unmistakable to everyone within earshot. A black single father in over his head pretending to belong among his betters. "I always wondered." Monica continued, her voice taking on a contemplative tone that Daniel recognized as her most dangerous register, whether you would ever find your footing. "But I suppose some people are simply more comfortable in supporting roles. There is no shame in that, Daniel. Someone has to do the ordinary work while the rest of us build something meaningful." Daniel's jaw tightened. He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him, waiting to see how he would respond. The familiar calculus ran through his mind. If he showed anger, he became the aggressive black man confirming their assumptions. If he defended himself, he seemed insecure. If he said nothing, he accepted her narrative as truth. Monica sensed his paralysis and pressed her advantage. "I truly do hope you find happiness, Daniel. Not everyone is equipped for more, and recognizing your limitations is actually quite mature." She turned to her date with a performative sigh. He was always so realistic about his capabilities. It was actually one of his better qualities. Soft laughter rippled through the onlookers. Daniel stood frozen, stripped of words, feeling the walls of the ballroom closing in around him. Monica's smile widened, triumphant, and then the crowd shifted. Victoria Ashford moved through the crowd like a blade through silk. People parted instinctively, conversations halting mid-sentence, as the most powerful woman in the room walked with quiet purpose toward the small circle that had formed around Daniel and Monica. She did not rush. She did not raise her voice. She simply arrived, and suddenly the entire dynamic of the moment transformed. Victoria stepped close to Daniel and linked her arm through his with the casual intimacy of a long-standing alliance. The gesture was simple, but its meaning was unmistakable to everyone watching. "This man belongs with me." "Daniel, there you are." Victoria's voice carried effortlessly warm but commanding. "I have been looking for you. The Hendersons specifically requested to meet our new director of strategy, and I would hate to keep them waiting." Monica's smile faltered. Director of strategy. The title landed like a slap. Victoria turned to face Monica as if noticing her for the first time. Her expression remained pleasant, but her eyes held the temperature of a winter morning. "I do not believe we have been introduced. I am Victoria Ashford, CEO of Sterling & Associates." Monica recovered quickly, extending her hand with practiced grace. "Monica Hayes. I work at Pemberton Financial, and actually Daniel and I know each other quite well. He is my ex-husband." "Ah?" Victoria accepted the handshake briefly, then withdrew. "Yes, I gathered that from the conversation I just overheard." The color drained slightly from Monica's face. Victoria continued her tone conversational, but carrying to every ear in the vicinity. "It is fascinating, actually. I have worked with thousands of professionals over my career, built this company from a 3-person office into what it is today. And in all that time, I have learned that the rarest quality in business is not intelligence or ambition. It is integrity under pressure." She glanced at Daniel with something approaching warmth. "When I met Daniel, he was in an impossible situation. His childcare had fallen through on the morning of an important presentation. Most people would have made excuses, rescheduled, protected their image. Daniel brought his son to work, handled an interruption with grace, and delivered one of the most insightful analyses I had seen in years." Victoria's gaze returned to Monica, sharpening almost imperceptibly. "That day I saw something I rarely see: a man who refuses to abandon his responsibilities to chase appearances, someone who understands that being a devoted father does not diminish professional excellence. It proves it." Monica's composed expression began to crack at the edges. Her date shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Daniel's work over the past few months has been exceptional," Victoria continued. "His strategic recommendations will generate an estimated $40 million for this company over the next 5 years. He has earned the respect of every serious person in this organization." Her smile thinned. "The fact that he is also raising a remarkable young man alone without complaint, without using it as an excuse, only confirms what I already knew about his character." The crowd had grown silent. People who had laughed moments ago now studied their champagne glasses with sudden fascination. Victoria looked directly at Monica. "You mentioned that not everyone is meant for spaces like this. I could not agree more. These rooms are full of people who inherited their positions, who mistake pedigree for competence, who confuse confidence with capability." Her voice dropped slightly, intimate and devastating. Daniel earned his place here, every single day. The question is not whether he belongs. The question is whether the people who doubted him can recognize excellence when it is standing right in front of them. Monica opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time since Daniel had known her, she appeared completely lost for words. Victoria gave her a final measured look. "I believe you said something about recognizing limitations. Perhaps that is advice worth taking." She turned to Daniel, her expression softening. "Now, shall we? The Hendersons are waiting." But Daniel did not move. He looked at Victoria, then at the watching crowd, then at Monica, who stood frozen, her carefully constructed superiority crumbling in real time. He thought about everything he had worked for, every assumption he had defied, every moment of doubt he had pushed through to reach this point. And then he thought about Ethan home, with a fever waiting for his father. "Actually," Daniel said quietly, "I need to leave." Victoria's eyebrow rose slightly. "The Hendersons. My son is sick." Daniel met her eyes steadily. "I appreciate everything you said, more than I can express, but I need to be home." For a moment, something unreadable passed across Victoria's face. Then she nodded slowly, and when she spoke, there was no disappointment in her voice, only something that sounded almost like respect deepening into admiration. "That," she said, "is exactly why I chose you." She released his arm and stepped back. "Go. Take care of your boy. The Hendersons will still be here next quarter, and so will you." Daniel turned to leave, then stopped. Monica still stood rooted to the spot, her date having quietly drifted away to examine a painting on the far wall. Her face held an expression Daniel had never seen during their marriage: uncertainty, vulnerability, the dawning recognition of a mistake that could not be unmade. He could have walked away without another word. Part of him wanted to, but Daniel had never been the kind of man who needed to see someone broken to feel whole. "Monica," his voice was gentle, free of triumph or bitterness, "I hope you find what you are looking for. I mean that." She flinched, as if the kindness hurt more than cruelty would have. Daniel walked out of the ballroom without looking back. The drive home felt different than the drive there. The city lights blurred past his windows, but Daniel barely noticed. He was thinking about his father, who had taught him that a man's worth was not measured by the size of his office or the weight of his wallet. It was measured by whether the people who depended on him could count on him to show up. He was thinking about Victoria, who had seen something in him that he had almost stopped believing in himself. Not because she pitied him, but because she recognized the strength it took to carry what he carried without letting it crush him.